A few days ago, I came across an article in a publication called Hustle, and the headline read that America's favorite family outings are increasingly out of reach. And in the article, they took prices of what they consider to be the favorite family outings of going to a movie, going to Disneyland, and one more that I can't think of. I've got ADHD. I'll link the article in the show notes, but they took the price that those things cost in 1960, adjusted them for inflation, and then compared them to what they cost present day. And the numbers were shocking. A lot of us are not able to do the things that we're used to doing in the summer. And one of the things that made me think of, especially with current gas prices, is how out of reach the great American road trip where you ride up and down with the family is going to be this year for so many people. I had occasion to go on a road trip recently because my dog is in Pennsylvania and I am staying the summer at my partner's house in Georgia. So I had to go get him, and we kind of made it like a family affair kind of thing. So we took a road trip, and then we thought, oh, well, we're all neurodivergent. So why don't we record it so that if we strangle each other on the way down, there'll be a black box. Okay, I'm joking. We decided to record it because we knew that we were recording footage for the podcast and it would be cool to have you all listen in, and we'd give some tips about being road tripping, and that's what we're going to do. So talk to you in a minute about that. My name is Renee Brooks, but you may have heard of me by my blog name, Black Girl Lost Keys. I started the blog to incorporate my culture into my experiences with ADHD. Managing ADHD isn't easy. We have challenges in some key areas like forgetfulness, showing up late, losing stuff, and big emotions. Sometimes you find your stuff, sometimes you find yourself. That's life with Lost Keys. On our podcast, you'll get to be a fly on the wall to everything. Talks with friends, other ADHD adventures, and a lot more. It's time to get started. Speaking of time, this podcast is proudly sponsored by Timo, a paid subscription app that helps you organize your life, stick to your routines, and work towards your personal goals in a visual and motivating way. To learn more about Timo, head to blackgirllostkeys.com/Timo. What challenges are waiting for the neurodivergent on a road trip? Well, there's a lot of different challenges. There's lots of noise, different kinds of things touching you that can cause a reaction as far as your hypersensitivity goes. There's difficulty in communication with the people that you're riding with, which can lead to frustration. We can have a lower threshold for frustration tolerance. Rejection sensitive dysphoria gets involved, and before you know it, we've got a bit of a traffic jam emotionally. Forgive me the bit of a pun. I did survive the road trip and come back to tell you all about it. But when you think about the potential for frustration and irritation and maybe a few meltdowns and tears that there are here, you want to be really cautious about what you're subjecting yourself to when you decide to get on the road. It's not that we can't travel. It's about how much trouble and discomfort being on the road is going to cause us. That's the thing that we don't often talk about. When we say that those things are challenges to us, people say, oh, well, why don't you do them anyway? We do them anyway, and we do them uncomfortably. And so when we're trying to assess, is this worth the trouble that it's going to cause me? That's kind of where we're headed at when we say that we have challenges. So here we are, several neurodivergents on a trip together. One of us driving, the other one sitting co-chair, one dog in the back, one young neurodivergent in the back. We're about, 2 hours into the trip?
Yeah, sounds about right.
We're about 2 hours into the trip, and we all still like each other so far. Although the dog is skating on thin ice because he gets.
Said they gave me some type of medication. I don't know what it was.
We gave him. I'll get you the name and put it in the show notes of the drops that we gave him because they seem to really be helping with his motion sickness. The thing about it is, he already threw up in the car before the trip began. I just bought this car last December. It still smells like a new car. I'm hoping that we land in Georgia with it still smelling like a new car in here. I'll be vacuuming for the rest of my life to get the dog fur out, so there's that. But we all still like each other so far. Nobody has actively begun to hate the other person yet, which is lovely. I mean, we got all the way up here without hating each other, so it's safe to think that we can make it back just fine. Not every road trip has some kind of epic purpose, but in this case, ours did. We had a mission. We were going up to my house, we were grabbing the dog, and we were coming back to Georgia to spend the rest of the summer. So our goals for our road trip were comfort, safety, cleanliness, because the car's still pretty new. We don't want to come home with super trashed carpet or things all jacked up in the car. That was a goal, and we met it, thank goodness. Some other goals that you can have when you're going on a road trip might be speed. Maybe it's a family emergency, you're trying to get there quickly, or maybe you just don't like being on the road a lot and you just want to go as fast as you possibly can. For others, it could be quiet. The bouncing off the windows of noise can be really frustrating for us. So your goal might be I don't mind if we go on a road trip. I just need it to be not super noisy and overstimulating. Other people, especially when you have kids, might think about the educational value. Are we going near anything historical? Do I want to point out any really beautiful kind of natural landscapes? There's landmarks that people want to visit. If you're going by a historical site or something unique, you might want to stop and look. You can plan for that when you're planning for your trip. And then some people want to eat really good food all the way down and all the way back. For those of you who want to put on your diners, drive-ins, and dives type hat, that might be what you're looking for. You're looking for a route that takes you past several different really, really good restaurants. And of course, beyond comfort and safety, we wanted to get there without a lot of headache. We knew that the challenge of having a dog with us was going to be extra stressful. So we wanted it to be really low key and stress free. So imagine our surprise when we figured out that we were traveling on, of all things, a holiday weekend. So, for those of you playing the home game, we are stopped dead on the highway because we're in traffic. Because, let's be honest, we're making this trip during 4th of July weekend, and which is,
Oh my God!
You didn't realize that? That's why I kind of gave you the eyebrow when you were like, "Let's leave Saturday." I thought you knew.
Well, what else? What other choice did we have?
I didn't say we had another choice.
Because, it's still 4th of July weekend, whether we leave Saturday, Sunday.
I don't know. I kind of assumed that everybody would be kind of settled in on Sunday because the next day was the holiday. It don't really matter. We're on the road. We're fine. It's fine. Well, looks like I just spilled the beans on what weekend it is. So now we're all in trouble. One of the things that I love about being on the road is the conversations that can start up while you're just sitting around having a discussion about nothing in particular. And it turns into this really great moment for bonding, connection, understanding. It's a real opportunity because you're sitting in the car with someone and you're working extra hard to get along with them because you're in the same car as them, which means you're within arm's length and they can get you if they want to. I mean, they won't, but they could if they wanted to. So there you are, and you're having to think cooperatively, and that can really open up some routes of discussion that I think you can only get from a group project. And I think that a road trip is very similar in that way. Like, it's a project, you're all collaborating on the idea of getting there safely, soundly, and without anybody being super upset. So when you're coming at it, contributing to that goal of wanting to make sure that you reach your destination without being super upset, you might come at the challenge a little bit differently. And instead of being in a situation where you might be frustrated, you might be a little more willing to extend grace. But for everything else, there's always the grit teeth voice. You know, the one where you're talking to someone like this because you're afraid you might do something to them and you want to emphasize every single word. Yeah.
I wreck my head at random car. This gives me something to look forward to. If you're one of those random cars, I'm sorry, but I hate you right now.
So what we might do, which I think would be kind of cool, is to leave it on for like an hour in each state. So that way we're not being recorded every single second of the trip, because there might come a time in the trip when we don't all like each other. Maybe we don't want that recorded for posterity, because you know how it is when you forget how much you disliked somebody in that moment and it's recorded, so you get to remind yourself like, oh, I still didn't like that tone of your voice. I didn't like it.
I know, right?
Use the grit teeth voice on me. I can hear you gritting your teeth. That is the grit teeth voice. I don't appreciate it. I'd be like, that was like 4 years ago, honey. 4 years ago. And I'm still upset. Upset. How many times have we gotten in trouble for our tone of voice? A lot of times you hear it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's what you've said and how that tone makes a person feel. It's a big difference between, hey, honey, did you check to see if the book bags were in the car? And, hey, honey, did you check to see if the book bags were in the car? Heard that? That's tone of voice. And we all know it. But even so, a lot of us who are neurodivergent struggle with being able to convey that information through tone of voice. It's difficult. You want to make sure that the messages you're sending are the messages that you want to be received. And sometimes through nonverbal communication like tone of voice or facial expression, things can be picked up that we're not necessarily trying to send out. And in a scenario like a road trip where there's lots of emotions and lots of tones of voice and lots of facial expressions crammed into a small space, we want to make sure that we're communicating as clearly as possible, or we're in for some potential hurt feelings, which is the very thing we were trying to avoid if you had been listening earlier. And I'm sure you were, otherwise you wouldn't be here listening to me talk about tone of voice. Did you check out what I said about tone of voice, honey? Hey, honey, did you check out what I said about tone of voice? I don't know. I'm babbling. But let's get back to it. I talk about tone of voice in a quick recording that I made for a stop on the side of the road. I think the thing that people have to watch out for most on road trips is like simple misunderstandings over basic shit. Like asking for directions or asking to be passed something can quickly turn into a misunderstanding over the tone of voice. So that's always something to be mindful of. That's something I'm particularly bad at, especially if I feel confused. Confused and irritated sound the same way coming out of my mouth. So it can make for a lot of misunderstandings on my part. I don't know. I've tried to curb it over the years. I'm doing my best to improve. I don't know if I'll ever be all the way there, but I'm trying. Routine can be the glue that holds our executive function together. If you're struggling to create a routine and you need some help, I'd recommend you take a look at our sponsor, Timo. It's a paid subscription app that helps you organize your life, stick to your routines, and work towards your personal goals in a visual and motivating way. To learn more about Timo, head to blackgirllostkeys.com/Timo. Again, that's blackgirllostkeys.com/Timo, TIIMO. One of the reasons why we have to be so careful with our tone of voice and inflection when we're in a confined space like a road trip is because we're having to communicate in ways that can seem more immediate, like, hey, look over there, or make sure you check for this, or make sure. Directives can sound very intense if we're not cautious with our tone of voice. And if someone takes that the wrong way, then it can create like a uncomfortable little social situation in your car. You're it makes you feel a little bit like you're able to get voted off the island or something. But another thing about tone of voice is that just like RSD works everywhere else in the world, that kind of tone of inflection, like that implication that maybe I'm incorrect, or maybe you think I'm a bad driver, or maybe you think that I'm not good enough. Like there's the thing about RSD that I think sometimes gets left out of the conversation is that rejection sensitive dysphoria isn't contingent upon whether actual rejection occurred. It's really about if you felt rejected. So maybe I think somewhere that you think that I'm a bad driver, and maybe I've heard that information my whole life, like you really stink at driving, you really suck at driving, blah 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 blah. So then you come back in here with this tone of voice asking me about a decision that I've made as a driver or as a passenger or whatever kind of corrective tone that a person can take with a person can really make a person feel hit in that RSD kind of spot where you feel rejected, even though maybe no real rejection took place. And so you've got this very innocent thing happening where there are two people trying to communicate in good faith, and they're not able to because they can't hear each other over the sound of that RSD. It's a noisy little thing, isn't it? There it is screaming. They're trying to get you. You're not good enough. I can't stand you. You always do this. Like RSD makes a lot of noise, and it makes it very difficult for us to hear the people that we're trying to communicate with. But anyways, having said all that, Kini and I had a really great conversation about this on the road, and we wanted to make sure we included it in this episode. So here you go, check in with us on the road and listen to us talk this out. Okay, so to set it up quick, it's like we were talking about, signaling or not, because we went to get on the highway and Key didn't signal. So I didn't know if she heard the direction or not. I don't care if she signaled or not. The sign's right there. It's perfectly safe. No big deal. I know some of y'all are real sensitive about turn signals. I care about them not that much. Not to get on the highway and signal. It'll be all right.
Exit lane already.
Yes. So I was saying the key, it was I remind people if I don't hear them signal and I know a turn's coming up, because everybody in my life has ADHD. And I don't assume they heard anything.
And it's funny, I usually hyper signal. Just because I'm like, well, it's not going to run up your light bill. It's safer to let people know what you're doing than not. And it's not an inconvenience. They made signaling super easy in situations where you need to signal quickly and you don't want to push the signal on and then push it off. You can just softly hold it in that direction and then let go. It's no big deal. But for some reason, that particular time I did not signal, so it was just kind of funny to me.
And that's the thing, like, we were, like, the discussion that I set you up for, because we were about to have it, and I figured it'd be a good thing to record, was that, like, it's a weird thing having to remind people of things like that, because if you don't remind them, then they're frustrated because you didn't remind them. Yeah, like, they're frustrated because you didn't remind them, but then if you over-remind them, then they're frustrated and feel like you're nagging. So I'm never quite sure where the balance is.
Right.
And so I just kind of sit there and twiddle my thumbs until hopefully I figured out what kind of person the person is. And this is kind of like our first big road trip. So, like, fortunately, we're both relatively easygoing people. So, like, that's cool. But, like, some people get super insulted when you remind them of stuff. Or maybe I just only know volatile, irritable motherfuckers, which is also a serious possibility.
Yes.
Because I feel like that also could be the problem. Like, some people, it triggers their RSD to be told that they're not making a turn right. And I'm just like, I'm not, like, this isn't a value judgment. It's really just an observation. And
because road trips are stressful enough without the added frustration of, like, missing your turns and all of that stuff, especially when you don't know where you are. We've stopped to get gas in some random place on the route. Neither one of us know this area that well. But yeah, some people I think it's interesting you mentioned it could trigger someone's RSD.
It does. Like, people get very volatile sometimes. They'll be like, oh, well, you think I can't drive? And it's like, no, I don't
want you to experience that frustration of having to loop around somewhere you don't know where you are. You don't know where it's safe to make a U-turn.
Yes. And then you got somebody else's RSD triggered because they're like, well, I was just trying to help you. And next thing you know, we've got a volatile situation. Like, while y'all were in the car, not in the car, but in the bathroom, I made a quick recording because I think it's something, like, I don't know, I try to be self-aware, so I was, like, thinking about the tone of my voice. Like, confusion and irritation sound the same for me. So a lot of times it'll sound like, I mean, I guess confusion is irritating for me, so maybe I am. I don't know. Anyways, usually it'll be like, I'll throw out something trying to clarify, and I hear the tone go up in somebody else's voice. So my tone goes up, and then their tone goes up. And then next thing you know, we in a fight because somebody asked where the gum was. And I
don't know where the gum is.
Right. Right.
I was just telling you.
It's like, I'm sorry. I don't want to fight. I just want to know where the gum is.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's funny how, like, all of that kind of thing is magnified during a road trip.
Obviously, we made it home from the road trip. What did we learn? I think that we came home from the road trip and felt like we had a bunch of great laughs and bonded and had a really great memory for us, the three of us hanging out together, spending time together. Probably one of the things that we'll look back on for many years. So if you're trying to take a road trip and you want to make sure that you're successful on your road trip, here are 5 tips that we have for you. You want to plan well. Timing is everything. Remember your purpose. We talked about goals for the road trip. We'll review those one more time before we go. You want to laugh hard. Love covers a multitude of sins. Laughter washes it away. You won't remember why you're mad if you have a good laugh together. Number 3 is a tone check. Your tone of voice can create a situation where everyone is upset, and, like, do your best. You're not going to be perfect with the tone of voice thing. Again, a lot of neurodivergent people struggle with tone of voice. So when we're saying be mindful of your tone of voice, that's all it is. Just be mindful where you can. Do your best. That's all any of us are doing. You'll want to make sure while you're on the road that you watch out for RSD kind of trouble spots. When you hear that voice rising kind of mountain voice thing, like, I didn't know about that. I thought you knew about that. You didn't know about that. When you hear that coming, maybe it's time to dial back and just let the conversation die down for a second until everyone can come back when they're feeling a little less escalating. And if you can, my last tip for being on the road, try to prioritize comfort. It's not realistic for every trip. Sometimes if you've got a serious time demand on you, all you can do is grab all of your stuff and go. But if you're going on a road trip where you're able to plan, make sure you have all of the things you need. Make sure you bring all the chargers. Bring everybody's favorite snack. Like, we all know we're going to be stopping on the road. We all know that we're going to get hungry on the road. We all know that we're going to get frustrated with the amount of noise on the road. Like, look at the things that you know are going to make you uncomfortable on the road and find out what will help to soothe that discomfort to the best of your ability. And if possible, make sure you have it with you on the road. You're going to feel a lot better when you get there if you're able to have been minimally inconvenienced on the road. We talked about road trip challenges. Their noise, touch, communication, frustration tolerance, hypersensitivity. So you watch out for those when you're planning your trip. Everybody has a different goal when they are going on their road trip. For us, ours was comfort, safety, and cleanliness from a brand new car. Some other goals you can have is speed of travel, quiet, educational value, really good eats, and landmarks that you might want to visit. So you've got all of those things at your disposal when you're trying to plan a trip. If you're headed out on the road this summer, I want you to be safe, enjoy yourself, and make sure that when you're queuing up your podcast, you listen to Life with Lost Keys. I'm Renee Brooks. Thanks so much for coming. For listening to Life with Lost Keys. If you enjoyed what you hear, go ahead and leave us a review and share us with whoever you like sharing your podcasts with from whatever platform you like listening to them on. If you're loving what you hear, please support us at patreon.com/Black Girl Lost Keys.